The Library of Liberal Arts. Oscar Piest, General Editor Epiktetus. The Enchiridion, by Epiktetus, translated by Thomas W. Higginson, with an introduction by Albert Salomon, Professor of Sociology, New School for Social Research, The Liberal Arts Press, New York. Copyright, 1948. The Liberal Arts Press, Incorporated. First edition, October, 1948. Reprinted, December 1950. August 1954. Second edition, November 1955. Published at 153 West 72nd Street, New York 23 NY. Printed in the United States of America. Contents note on the text. Introduction, selected bibliography. The Enchiridion. Note on the text. The text of the second edition is a reprint of the first edition, except for a few minor corrections in style, punctuation, and spelling, which have been revised to conform to current American usage. The editorial staff of the publishers has added a few explanatory notes, which are set in brackets and marked ed. OP Introduction. The little book by Epiktetus called Enchiridion, or Manual, has played a disproportionately large role in the rise of modern attitudes and modern philosophy. As soon as it had been translated into the vernacular languages, it became a bestseller among independent intellectuals, among anti-Christian thinkers, and among philosophers of a subjective caste. Montaigne had a copy of the Enchiridion among his books. Pascal violently rejected the megalomaniac pride of the Stoic philosopher. Frederick the Great carried the book with him on all campaigns. It was a source of inspiration and encouragement to Anthony, Earl of Shaftesbury, in the serious illness which ended only in his death. Many pages of his diaries contain passages copied from the Enchiridion. It has been studied and widely quoted by Scottish philosophers like Francis Hutcheson, Adam Smith, and Adam Ferguson, who valued Stoic moral philosophy for its reconciliation of social dependency and personal independence. That there was a rebirth of Stoicism in the centuries of rebirth which marked the emergence of the modern age was not mere chance. Philosophical, moral, and social conditions of the time united to cause it. Roman Stoicism had been developed in times of despotism as a philosophy of lonely and courageous souls who had recognized the redeeming power of philosophical reason in all the moral and social purposes of life. Philosophy as a way of life makes men free. It is the last-ditch stand of liberty in a world of servitude. Many elements in the New Age led to thought which had structural affinity with Roman Stoicism. Modern times had created the independent thinker, the free intellectual in a secular civilization. Modern times had destroyed medieval liberties and had established the new despotism of the absolute state supported by ecclesiastical authority. Modern philosophies continued the basic trend in Stoicism in making the subjective consciousness the foundation of philosophy. The Stoic emphasis on moral problems was also appealing in an era of rapid transition when all the values which had previously been taken for granted were questioned and reconsidered. While it is interesting to observe how varied were the effects produced by this small volume, this epitome of the Stoic system of moral philosophy, these effects seem still more remarkable when we consider that it was not intended to be a philosophical treatise on Stoicism for students. It was, rather, to be a guide for the advanced student of Stoicism, to show him the best roads toward the goal of becoming a true philosopher. Thus, Epictetus and his Enchiridion have a unique position in Roman Stoicism. Seneca and Marcus Aurelius had selected Stoic philosophy as the most adequate system for expressing their existential problems of independence, solitude, and history. In this enterprise, Seneca made tremendous strides toward the insights of social psychology as a byproduct of his consciousness of decadence. In this he was close to Nietzsche, but he was not primarily concerned with the unity of the Stoic system. Marcus Aurelius changed the philosophical doctrine into the regimen of the lonesome ruler. In contrast to both, Epictetus was teaching Stoic philosophy as a doctrine and as a way of life. The Enchiridion is a summary of theoretical and applied Stoicism. Epictetus was the son of a woman slave, born between 50 and 60 AD at Hierapolis in Phrygia. We do not know how he came to Rome. He was there as slave to one of Nero's distinguished freedmen, who served as the emperor's secretary. While still in service, Epictetus took courses with Musonius Rufus, the fashionable Stoic philosopher, who was impressed by the sincere and dynamic personality of the young slave and trained him to be a Stoic philosopher. Epictetus became a free man and began teaching philosophy on street corners in the market, but he was not successful. During the rule of Domitian, Epictetus, with many other philosophers, was exiled from Rome, probably between 89 and 92 AD. He went to Nicopolis, across Actium in Epirus, where he conducted his own school. He was so well regarded and highly esteemed that he established a reputation of the place as the town of Epictetus's school. Students came from Athens and Rome to attend his classes. Private citizens came to ask his advice and guidance. Some of his students returned to their homes to enter the traditional careers to which they were socially obligated. Others assumed the philosophic way of life in order to escape into the sphere of Stoic freedom. Among the students was a young Roman, Flavius Arrian, who took courses at Nicopolis when Epictetus was already old. Flavius, who was born in 108 AD, was one of the intimates of Hadrian, who made him consul in 130 AD. He probably studied with Epictetus between the years 123 and 126 AD. The informal philosophical talks which Epictetus had with his students fascinated him. Needless to say, there were also systematic courses in the fields of philosophy. But it was the informal discourses which convinced Arrian that he had finally discovered a Stoic Socrates, or a Stoic Diogenes, who was not merely teaching a doctrine, but also living the truth. Arrian recorded many of the discourses and informal conversations of Epictetus with his intimate students. He took them down in shorthand in order not to lose the ineffable liveliness, grace, and wit of the beloved teacher. Arrian retired into private life after the death of Hadrian in 138 AD and dedicated himself to his literary work. He published his notes on Epictetus's teaching under the title Discourses in 4 books. The Enchiridion, which was also arranged by Arrian, is a brief summary of the basic ideas of Stoic philosophy and an introduction to the techniques required to transform Stoic philosophy into a way of life. Thus, we do not have any original writings of Epictetus. Like G.H. Mead in recent times, he was completely dedicated to the human and intellectual problems of his students. He left it for them to preserve what they considered to be the lasting message of the teacher. In contrast to Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus had no subjective approach to the Stoic doctrines. Moral philosophy was the center of his teaching, and epistemology was only instrumental. It is even permissible to say that he took physics or cosmology too lightly. If this is granted, we must admit that he is completely absorbed by the fundamentals of Stoic thought as presented in the Enchiridion. Epictetus's personality is totally integrated in the act of reasoning, which establishes conformity with nature. A remarkable difference between the discourses and the Enchiridion should be mentioned. The discourses are a living image of the teacher in action. They present the process of philosophizing, not the finished product. They show the enthusiastic and sober, the realistic and pathetic moralist in constantly changing perspectives determined by the changing students with their various concerns, problems, and questions. His teachings, his formulations, have direct reference to the various life situations in which the students should apply and practice the master's Stoic teaching. No human situation is omitted. As a guide to conduct, philosophy has relevance for all. Whether the students have to attend a dinner party, whether they are among competitors in a stadium or in a swimming pool, whether they have to present themselves at court or in an office, whether they are in the company of their mothers and sisters or of girlfriends, in all human situations, the philosopher knows the correct advice for the philosophical apprentice. Thus, in the discourses, Arrian presents the unique individuality of the philosopher and of his applied moral method in living contact with various students in concrete situations. Epictetus, as teacher, anticipates very modern educational methods in his regard for the structure of situations and the changing perspectives in human relationships. Nothing like this is revealed in the Enchiridion. Gone is the Stoic philosopher as living spirit. What remains is the living spirit of Stoicism. The Enchiridion is a manual for the combat officer. This analogy should be taken seriously. The Roman Stoics coined the formula, vivere militare. Life is being a soldier. The student of philosophy is a private, the advancing Stoic is a non-commissioned officer, and the philosopher is the combat officer. For this reason, all Roman Stoics apply metaphors and images derived from military life. Apprentice students of Stoicism are described as messengers, as scouts of God, as representatives of divine nature. The advancing student who is close to the goal of being a philosopher has the rank of an officer. He is already able to establish inner freedom and independence. He understands the basic Stoic truth of subjective consciousness, which is to distinguish what is in our power from what is not in our power. Not in our power are all the elements which constitute our environment, such as wealth, health, reputation, social prestige, power, the lives of those we love, and death. In our power are our thinking, our intentions, our desires, our decisions. These make it possible for us to control ourselves and to make of ourselves elements and parts of the universe of nature. This knowledge of ourselves makes us free in a world of dependencies. This superiority of our powers enables us to live in conformity with nature. The rational philosophy of control of self and of adjustment to the whole implies an asceticism of the emotional and the sensitive life. The philosopher must examine and control his passions, his love, his tenderness at all times, in order always to be ready for the inevitable moment of farewell. The Stoics practiced a Jesuitism avant la lettre. They were able to live in the world as if they did not live in it. To the Stoic, life is a military camp, a play on the stage, a banquet to which we are invited. The Enchiridion briefly indicated the techniques which the philosopher should apply in acting, the diverse roles which God might assign to those whom he loves, the Stoic philosophers. From the rules of social conduct to the recommendations of sexual asceticism before marriage, and the method of true thinking, the advanced Stoic will find all principles of perfection and all precepts for realizing philosophical principles in his conduct in this tiny volume. Thus the Enchiridion was liberating for all intellectuals who learned from it that there are philosophical ways of self-redemption. From its time, the secular thinker could feel jubilant because he was not in need of a divine grace. Epictetus had taught him that philosophical reason could make him free and that he was capable of redeeming himself by sound reasoning. In the Stoic distinctions of personality and world, of I and mine, of subjective consciousness and the world of objects, of freedom and dependence, we find implicit the basic elements of modern philosophies of rationalism and of objective idealism or pantheism. For this reason, there is a continuous renaissance of Stoicism from Descartes, Grotius, and Bishop Butler to Montesquieu, Adam Smith, and Kant. In this long development in modern times, the tiny Enchiridion of Epictetus played a remarkable part. The translations of Epictetus and of all other Stoics had the widest effect on philosophers, theologians, and lay thinkers. They were studied by the clergy of the various Christian denominations, by the scientists who were striving for a natural religion, and by the independent philosophers who were eager to separate philosophy from religion. There were many outstanding bishops in the Catholic and Anglican churches who were eager to transform the traditions of Roman Stoicism into Christian Stoicism. Among the Calvinistic denominations were many thinkers who were in sympathy with Stoic moral principles because of their praise of the austerity of life and of the control of passions. Likewise, the adherents of natural religion were propagating Stoicism as the ideal pattern of universally valid and intelligible religion. Renascent Stoicism had three functions in the rise of the modern world. First, it reconciled Christian traditions to modern rationalistic philosophies. Secondly, it established an ideal pattern of natural religion. And thirdly, it opened the way for the autonomy of morals. Albert Salomon, The New School for Social Research, July 1948. Selected bibliography. Epictetus, Life and Work. Arnim Hans Pfiffiv, Epiktetos in Pauli Wissowa, Editor. Realenzyklopädie der klassischen Altertumswissenschaft, 6, columns 126 to 131. Arnold E.V., Epictetus in Hastings, Encyclopedia of Religion and Ethics, 1912. Volume 5, pages 323-324. Bonhoeffer, A. Epiktet und die Stoa. Stuttgart, 1890. Ethik des Stoikers Epiktet. Stuttgart, 1894. Epiktet und das Neue Testament. Gießen, 1911. Bruns, Ivo, De Schola Epikteti. Kiel, 1897. Bultmann, Rudolf. Das religiöse Moment in der ethischen Unterweisung des Epiktets und das Neue Testament. Zeitschrift für die neutestamentliche Wissenschaft und die Kunde des Urchristentums. Volume 13, 1912. Seiten 97 bis 110. 177 bis 191. Collardot, Th. Études sur Epictètes. Paris 1903. Hartmann, K. Arion und Epiktet. Neue Jahrbücher für das klassische Altertum. Volume 15, 1905. Jagoux, Amand, Epictètes et Platon. Paris 1944. Lagrange, M. J. La philosophie religieuse d'Épictète et le christianisme. Revue biblique, Volume 9, 1912. Seiten 5 bis 21, 192 bis 212. Old Father, W.A., Introduction to Epictetus, Loeb Classics, Volume 1. Souillet, J. Introduction to Entretien. Paris, 1943. Weber, Louis, La morale d'Épictète et les besoins présents de l'enseignement moral, Revue de métaphysique et de morale, 1905, pages 830 à 858, 1906, pages 342 à 360, 1907, pages 327 à 347, 1909, page 203 à 326. Main Works on Stoicism and Related Problems. Arnold, E. V. Roman Stoicism. Cambridge, E. 1911. Bevan, E. Stoics and Skeptics. Oxford, 1913. Brochard, V. Études de philosophie ancienne et de philosophie moderne. Paris, 1912. X. R. D. Stoic and Epicurean. New York, 1910. Martha, C. Les moralistes sur l'Empire romain. Paris, 1886. Murray, Gilbert, Stoïque, Christian, humaniste. London, 1940. Robin, L. La morale antique. Paris, 1938, pages 57, 130, 152, 167. Wendland, Paul, Philo und die zynisch-stoische Diatribe. Berlin, 1895. Die hellenistische Kultur in ihren Beziehungen zum Judentum und Christentum. Tübingen, 1912. Zanta, L. La Renaissance du Stoizisme au 16. Jahrhundert. Paris, 1914. Zeller, A. The Stoics, Epicureans and Skeptics. London, 1892. Influence of Stoicism. Busson, Henri, La pensée religieuse française de Charon à Pascal. Paris, 1933. Kapitel 8. Stoiciens et Epicuriens. Seiten 379 bis 429. Dilte Wilhelm, Gesammelte Werke, Volume 2. Einfluss der Stoa auf die Ausbildung des natürlichen Systems der Geisteswissenschaften. Seiten 153 bis 162. Anthropologie, Stoa und natürliches System im 17. Jahrhundert. Seiten 439 bis 457. Grötheusen, Bernhard, Philosophische Anthropologie. München, 1928. Chapter Die römisch-griechische Lebensphilosophie. Rand, B. The Life, Letters, etc. of Anthony, Earl of Shaftesbury. London, 1900. Saunders, Jason L. Justus Lipsius. The Philosophy of Renaissance Stoicism. New York, 1955. Wenley, R. M. Stoicism and its Influence. New York, 1927. The Enchiridion One. There are things which are within our power, and there are things which are beyond our power. Within our power are opinion, aim, desire, aversion, and in one word, whatever affairs are our own. Beyond our power are body, property, reputation, office, and, in one word, whatever are not properly our own affairs. Now the things within our power are by nature free, unrestricted, unhindered. But those beyond our power are weak, dependent, restricted, alien. Remember then that if you attribute freedom to things by nature dependent and take what belongs to others for your own, you will be hindered, you will lament, you will be disturbed, you will find fault both with gods and men. But if you take for your own only that which is your own and view what belongs to others just as it really is, then no one will ever compel you, no one will restrict you, you will find fault with no one, you will accuse no one, you will do nothing against your will, no one will hurt you, you will not have an enemy, nor will you suffer any harm. Aiming, therefore, at such great things, remember that you must not allow yourself any inclination, however slight, toward the attainment of the others. but that you must entirely quit some of them, and for the present postpone the rest. But if you would have these, and possess power and wealth likewise, you may miss the latter in seeking the former, and you will certainly fail of that by which alone happiness and freedom are procured. Seek at once, therefore, to be able to say to every unpleasing semblance, "You are but a semblance and by no means the real thing," and then examine it by those rules which you have, and first and chiefly by this, whether it concerns the things which are within our own power or those which are not. And if it concerns anything beyond our power, be prepared to say that it is nothing to you. 2. Remember that desire demands the attainment of that of which you are desirous, and aversion demands the avoidance of that to which you are averse, that he who fails of the object of his desires is disappointed, and he who incurs the object of his aversion is wretched. If then you shun only those undesirable things which you can control, you will never incur anything which you shun. But if you shun sickness, or death, or poverty, you will run the risk of wretchedness. Remove aversion, then, from all things that are not within our power, and apply it to things undesirable which are within our power. But for the present, altogether restrain desire, for if you desire any of the things not within our own power, you must necessarily be disappointed, and you are not yet secure of those which are within our power, and so are legitimate objects of desire. Where it is practically necessary for you to pursue or avoid anything, do even this with discretion and gentleness and moderation. 3. With regard to whatever objects either delight the mind or contribute to use or are tenderly beloved, remind yourself of what nature they are, beginning with the merest trifles. If you have a favorite cup, that it is but a cup of which you are fond of. For thus, if it is broken, you can bear it. If you embrace your child or your wife, that you embrace a mortal, and thus, if either of them dies, you can bear it. 4. When you set about any action, remind yourself of what nature the action is. If you are going to bathe, represent to yourself the incidents usual in the bath, some persons pouring out, others pushing in, others scolding, others pilfering. And thus you will more safely go about this action if you say to yourself, "I will now go to bathe and keep my own will in harmony with nature," and so with regard to every other action. For thus, if any impediment arises in bathing, you will be able to say, "It was not only to bathe that I desired, but to keep my will in harmony with nature, and I shall not keep it thus if I am out of humor at things that happen." Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things. Thus, death is nothing terrible, else it would have appeared so to Socrates. But the terror consists in our notion of death, that it is terrible. When, therefore, we are hindered or disturbed or grieved, let us never impute it to others, but to ourselves, that is, to our own views. It is the action of an uninstructed person to reproach others for his own misfortunes, of one entering upon instruction to reproach himself, and one perfectly instructed to reproach neither others nor himself. 6. Be not elated at any excellence not your own. If a horse should be elated and say, "I am handsome," it might be endurable. But when you are elated and say, "I have a handsome horse," know that you are elated only on the merit of the horse. What then is your own? The use of the phenomena of existence, so that when you are in harmony with nature in this respect, you will be elated with some reason, for you will be elated at some good of your own. 7. As in a voyage, When the ship is at anchor, if you go on shore to get water, you may amuse yourself with picking up a shellfish or a truffle in your way. But your thoughts ought to be bent toward the ship, and perpetually attentive, lest the captain should call, and then you must leave all these things, that you may not have to be carried on board the vessel, bound like a sheep. Thus, likewise in life, if, instead of a truffle or shellfish, such a thing as a wife or a child be granted you, there is no objection. But if the captain calls, run to the ship, leave all these things, and never look behind. But if you are old, never go far from the ship, lest you should be missing when called for. 8. Demand. Not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and you will go on well. 9. Sickness is an impediment to the body, but not to the will unless itself pleases. Lameness is an impediment to the leg, but not to the will. And say this to yourself with regard to everything that happens, for you will find it to be an impediment to something else, but not truly to yourself. X. Upon every accident, remember to turn toward yourself and inquire what faculty you have for its use. If you encounter a handsome person, you will find continence the faculty needed. If pain, then fortitude. If reviling, then patience. And when thus habituated, the phenomena of existence will not overwhelm you. 11. Never say of anything, I have lost it, but I have restored it. Has your child died? It is restored. Has your wife died? She is restored. Has your estate been taken away? That likewise is restored. But it was a bad man who took it. What is it to you by whose hands he who gave it has demanded it again? While he permits you to possess it, hold it as something not your own, as do travelers at an inn. 12. If you would improve, lay aside such reasonings as these. If I neglect my affairs, I shall not have a maintenance. If I do not punish my servant, he will be good for nothing. For it were better to die of hunger, exempt from grief and fear, than to live in affluence with perturbation. And it is better that your servant should be bad than you unhappy. Begin therefore with little things. Is a little oil spilled, or a little wine stolen? Say to yourself, this is the price paid for peace and tranquility, and nothing is to be had for nothing. And when you call your servant, consider that it is possible he may not come at your call, or if he does, that he may not do what you wish. But it is not at all desirable for him, and very undesirable for you, that it should be in his power to.
Die Welt ist chaotisch, doch ihr Geist muss es nicht sein. Vor 2000 Jahren entschlüsselte ein ehemaliger Sklave namens Epiktet den Code zur mentalen Unbesiegbarkeit. Heute hören Sie das Handbüchlein für ein Leben in absoluter Freiheit. Am Ende dieser Stunde werden Sie genau wissen, was in Ihrer Macht steht und was nicht. Beginnen wir die Reise zur stoischen Meisterschaft. Die Welt ist chaotisch, doch Ihr Geist muss es nicht sein. Vor 2000 Jahren entschlüsselte ein ehemaliger Sklave namens Epiktet den Code zur mentalen Unbesiegbarkeit. Heute hören Sie das Handbüchlein für ein Leben in absoluter Freiheit. Am Ende dieser Stunde werden Sie genau wissen, was in Ihrer Macht steht und was nicht. Beginnen wir die Reise zur stoischen Meisterschaft. Die Welt ist chaotisch, doch Ihr Geist muss es nicht sein. Vor 2000 Jahren entschlüsselte ein ehemaliger Sklave namens Epiktet den Code zur mentalen Unbesiegbarkeit. Heute hören Sie das Handbüchlein für ein Leben in absoluter Freiheit. Am Ende dieser Stunde werden Sie genau wissen, was in Ihrer Macht steht und was nicht. Beginnen wir die Reise zur stoischen Meisterschaft. Die Welt ist chaotisch, doch Ihr Geist muss es nicht sein. Vor 2000 Jahren entschlüsselte ein ehemaliger Sklave namens Epiktet den Code zur mentalen Unbesiegbarkeit. Heute hören Sie das Handbüchlein für ein Leben in absoluter Freiheit. Am Ende dieser Stunde werden Sie genau wissen, was in Ihrer Macht steht und was nicht. Beginnen wir die Reise zur stoischen Meisterschaft.